Okay. Are we ready?
I think so.
Are we ready for a podcast?
Oh, most certainly.
Okay. Let
I'm
me
gonna
pull up the stuff.
sit up straighter.
Yeah, sit up straight. Proper posture. So hello and welcome to Learning the Law, a podcast about all things legal with a focus on current events, where we try to teach you things in an hour. My name is Ashley, aka Phoenix Nymphy, and my co-host, who's the man of the hour, my husband Ron. This
Hello.
podcast is purely educational and should not be taken as legal advice. This podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship, and
Yep.
this podcast is based on our interpretation of relevant law. Any opinions expressed are the opinions of the individuals making them and do not reflect the opinions of any firm, company, or other individuals. Ron is a licensed practicing attorney in the state of California.
Since 1999.
And we are now officially on Patreon. Please consider supporting the podcast through there. You can find it on patreon.com/learningthelaw. And if you would like to sponsor us, we are looking for sponsors. Please send us an email at twolazydogsmedia@gmail.com. And I would promote the Sunday evenings on TikTok, but we have not actually followed through with that. So I'm going to hold off on promoting that again because we've been very busy and been unable to do that. So we're just going to jump right into it. We have been watching the confirmation hearings.
As much as able.
Yeah, as much as able. And reading up on them, and last night was a doozy. It was lovely watching that, but
Glad I had an energy drink.
right. So first things first, we're just we're gonna kind of explain what confirmation hearings do, how they work, what their procedure is, and then we'll go into the current confirmation hearings for Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first nominated Black woman for the Supreme Courts. Yeah, so I have lots of opinions, but I'm gonna try to not get angry, but I've got angry a lot watching this because the rhetoric that is used on both sides, by the way, this is not expressly GOP, this is Democrats as well. The rhetoric and the language that is used really irritates me because they're just inflammatory. No matter what, they're just inflammatory. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing that happens when it comes to the confirmation process is you have to have the nomination. And all presidential appointments that require a Senate confirmation, which there's actually a long list of, must follow this same process, from Supreme Court nominations to Department of Transportation, Department of Defense, Urban Development. Like anything where the president nominates someone requires this same procedure. So from, the high cases, like, the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court nominee is probably one of the largest and most not most important, but definitely one of the most watched.
I would say it's the most important that they can do.
And it's not every president that actually gets to nominate a Supreme Court judge. I think, what was the number? 115 judges have been a Supreme Court judge in our country since its
Correct.
beginning. So, it's not, we've had quite a few in the last, 10 or so years, simply because people die and this is a lifetime appointment. So that's kind of why we've been getting a lot lately. But
Well, on average, you get
maybe one a term. I wouldn't
Well,
say one a term. I wouldn't say one a term.
you've had 45, 46 presidents. So you've had about, with single terms, I'm just eyeballing it here, maybe 80, 85 terms.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a nomination about once every, you get like 2 nominations for every 3 presidential terms on average.
Yeah. And, you know, like the last, outside of Trump, the last few presidents have had 2 terms. So that's why you've seen so many nominations, because they've, you know, they're at that point where 8 years versus 4 years.
Right. Right.
So
Obama had one.
he did have one, but it didn't go through because the
He
Senate,
had 2 nominations. I believe he had one in 2010.
the Senate never did anything for his nominations, though. That's the problem. He had legal nominations, but they blackballed and kept him from being able to actually put anyone. And I feel it illegally stopped his confirmation hearings from happening.
Yeah, Kagan was his.
Um,
Nominated by Obama and served since 2010.
um, yeah, and he should have gotten. So Gorsuch should not have been Trump's first nomination. Trump shouldn't have actually had 3 nominations, but he
Correct.
did. And Gorsuch shouldn't have been his first nomination. That nomination should have actually gone to Obama, because that seat was up during his administration. And based off of our laws and how our laws work, that seat actually went, seat should have been filled before Obama's presidency ended. And
Well,
that's
you got 2 entities that have to agree on a nominee,
well,
and either one can stall the other.
I understand that, but no matter who he nominated, they didn't go for, because they didn't want him to have another nominee.
Right. Oh,
Because
right.
they
I'm
were,
not arguing that. What I'm arguing is if the Senate wants to delay a nomination for 2 terms, they could.
this is also true.
And that needs to be fixed.
That does need to be fixed. We'll get to that. So they do have that ability, but I feel they shouldn't have that ability.
Right. I don't think the founding fathers thought of that.
Yeah. So before any nominations are made, so, and all of these, you know, the notes will be in, you know, tomorrow up on the website, so you can see all this. But they have to vet a list of candidates, because there's a lot of candidates. So they take suggestions from Congress, special interest groups, and then they choose their nominee. The president chooses their nominee. And then they go into investigations, and they have the FBI and the IRS do a series of investigations that should be thorough enough to find anything in their background that is questionable. For example, a lot of the, you know what? We'll come back to this. I just want to talk about the procedure, and then we'll get to Ketanji Brown Jackson's and compare the process to her process, because I want this to be just facts and not opinions right now. So, so the president has to have a written nomination provided to the Senate, and then it's read on the Senate floor, and that's when they start their procedure of what they call advice and consent, which is basically where they investigate the nominee, whoever it is, and then do their own hearings. And so they have a committee hearing, and the committee is, so each committee is each committee, and there's a table of what committee investigates what nominee. For this one in particular, it's the Judiciary Committee, because this is the Supreme Court.
Right.
But each committee, each nominee has its own committee. Some committees cross over depending on what department it is and like do a dual hearing. Um, in this case, they don't need to. The Judiciary Committee is quite large. Um, so they do the committee hearings, and that's where we're at right now for her process. What they'll do is they will conduct their own investigations, um, looking into the background of the nominee, looking into they will bring in like character witnesses, they will bring in people for and against this. Like it's kind of like a trial. Like it's a trial. To see if this person is uh gonna be a good fit for this position. Um According to Ballotpedia, only one cabinet position since 1945 has been confirmed by the Senate after being reported as unfavorable by a committee. Henry A. Wallace was confirmed by the Senate by a vote of 56 to 32 to become the Secretary of Commerce in March 1st, 1945. So it's kind of rare for the Senate to confirm someone if they don't favor them, if the
Right.
committee doesn't favor them. And the committee hearings are different from the Senate hearings. So there's committee hearings, and then there's the Senate hearings, and then there's the presidential notification. So the Senate hearings are not as elaborate as the committee hearings. Basically, the Senate hearing is just them getting together and then a short debate and then a vote. And that's what the Senate hearing is. So after the committee hearing, so once the committee hearing is done, the committee themselves either say we favor this person, we don't favor this person. I think there's 3. Yeah, so they will favorably, unfavorably, or without recommendation. So if they don't really have an opinion either way, they won't give any recommendation. Usually it's favorable or unfavorable. And then the Senate basically votes, and then the president is notified, and that's how we get our confirmation. Now, right now we're in the committee hearing process of Ketanji Brown Jackson, and they are mainly focusing on her records as a judge. Her focus when she was a lawyer, as a judge, her focus was actually dealing with prison sentences and defending what the Republicans have called the undefendable. She defends the criminals who are unfavorable and tries to help, because everybody deserves a lawyer. Everybody has the right to their own attorney, and sometimes, she's done a lot of public defender work, and a lot of that is based off of her own personal history as a Black woman who sees the injustices that Black people are given, but also because her own uncle was sent to prison on, I believe it was cocaine charges. It was a drug charge of some sort. And just the way he was treated and the way it was handled, that's why she basically wants to change how it's set up, because drug charges are treated like murder charges sometimes, and that's my opinion speaking on that. But so that's basically where we're at with how the proceeding is when it comes to confirmation hearings. Everybody goes through this. All of Trump's people went through this. And so I guess we're kind of at that point where we're now talking about the current confirmation hearings. I mean, there's not really much else to say. I could give you a list of the jurisdictions, but you could just click the link and look at the jurisdictions. I don't need to talk about that table. I don't need to tell you what committee focuses on what. That's not necessary here. All you need to know right now is the Judiciary Committee is a committee that does the Supreme Court nominations, and there's a lot of Republican names that I don't feel should be on this committee because of who they are and how they behave. But if you think about it, there's only 2 Republicans for each state, so you kind of don't have a choice, do you? Like,
No, and
hold up.
it's up to McConnell
Yes.
to divvy out the committee assignments.
Okay, that's fair. So
Uh, I do think if you're a member of the Judicial Committee, you should at least have some kind of legal background,
I would agree.
but that's not necessarily true for the members.
Yeah, I would agree. You
Uh,
definitely need some sort of like knowledge on legal proceedings. Which most politicians are lawyers or have a history of law because
it's changing,
it is changing because you
and
have people like Lauren Boebert.
I this is what I have to say about that. I just have to go for a minute. You need some lawyers who actually know how to write a law in Congress, or that law that the non-lawyer writes is going to be up for so much interpretation. Who knows what it's going to actually mean?
That's a fair point. Yeah.
And so all these non-lawyers, they don't write the laws. They let their lobbyists write the law. And then they will read it later, if at all. And they will just blindly vote on it.
Interesting. Okay. And so that's yeah. I think there needs to be some kind of education when it comes to running the government. Uh Whether it's experience or whether it's educational higher education. For example, and I'm only saying this because I just saw a tweet from her and she's just an idiot. Lauren Boebert, I think, has a GED and nothing more, and immediately became a Senate. She got a Senate chair, and she has no further education. She has no experience, nothing. Like what? Same with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has no experience when it comes to this kind of thing, like at all. She has no experience in those are the people that I don't want in politics. I want people that actually understand politics, but I also want people that understand how it is to live in this world or, in this country, right? So, like the average man, but to me, the average man has some kind of education. The average person has a form of education that knows a little bit, right? I know that not everybody can afford college, and college isn't for everybody. No,
No, it's not.
it's not for everybody.
I
But that doesn't mean that you can't also have education based on this stuff. You know what I mean? Like you can have experience by like just being in local politics, right? And learning how it works that way. Like
would like people who know how to think critically.
yes. And you don't learn critical thinking with a GED.
No, the people that
I'm sorry, I misspoke. She's House of Representatives, not Senate.
yeah, right. People who have GEDs can learn to think critically, but it takes life experience.
Yes, and she is
And that life
35.
experience,
She's 35. She should have life experience, but she
the
doesn't.
life experience that you need is not entitled, privileged, rich life experience.
Right.
It has to be middle, working, lower class, true life experience. And that's my class bias. Dead air. Hello.
I'm
Oh,
okay. Like I don't know what what do you want me to say?
no, I didn't want you to say anything. That's me. I felt like we were going on the path that if you're not educated, you you're stupid.
Oh, yes, no,
And
I
that's
don't
not,
agree with that.
oh no, not at all. For example, I'm going to take your dad for an example. I don't think your dad is stupid at all.
No, he barely
Um,
graduated high school. My dad is actually highly intelligent. I don't
yes,
agree with his policies, and we definitely disagree politically. And he has become a Trumper, and it's very hard to have a conversation with him. But I think that comes with the area he lives in, and his,
yeah,
he's evangelical Christian, and I think that's why he thinks the way he thinks, because I'm not an evangelical Christian anymore.
I never
So
was.
I was, because that's
I
what I
know.
grew up in. And I definitely have pulled away from that way of thinking. So my dad and I definitely have a hard time when it comes to politics. But he is highly intelligent. Like he's the one who taught me how to critically think, which is what's so upsetting about the current times, right? Um, so uh
I do have to make another correction.
what's
Just
that?
Obama actually has 2 nominees get to the Supreme Court.
He did have 2 nominees get to the Supreme Court?
S Sonia Sotomayor.
Oh, I didn't realize she was his. Okay, all
I
right.
I didn't either. I thought for some reason I thought she was,
I
a
thought she
Bush.
was a Bush one
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, and, Alina Kagan. Those
Okay.
were his 2.
Okay.
And,
Um,
as a side note, FDR had 8.
wow. Really?
Yeah.
Dang. Um, okay. Stuff is freezing. Anyway, so we watched yesterday, first day of yesterday. We watched half of it. It was 5 hours. I mean, they're given 10 minutes the first day each. And there's how many? There's what? 50, are there 50 on the committee, or I don't think all 50 states are represented on the,
15.
just 15. Okay. So
Yeah.
they're given,
That's why they get 20 to 30 minutes each.
yeah, today they're given 30 minutes to chat with her, and then tomorrow it's 20 minutes. Yesterday was 10, I believe. So they have their opening statements, right? And to me, and a lot of articles, the Republicans are just, they keep comparing her not to Barrett, surprisingly. They keep comparing her to Kavanaugh, which to me is not a fair comparison because he raped somebody. She hasn't. They don't really compare. So, and they're talking about how they were treated during his hearing. And who was it? Was it Graham that talked about the letter that showed up at the end of the first day saying, "Oh, by the way, this guy is a rapist"?
Yeah. Graham is butthurt, for lack of a better term.
Because they didn't choose a woman from his state, the woman from his
Cor-
state, Childs.
Correct.
Yeah. He also, like a child, got up and left because people were fact checking what he was saying, and he didn't like it.
Yeah.
Which we will get to that. But I want to talk about the first day. So, in my opinion, the first day, from what I watched, and this is where the opinion point comes in, and we'll differentiate between opinion and fact checking. I promise, because there's a lot of stuff that's come up that they're not right on. Both sides are not right on, and so I want to make sure that people are aware of the truth. My opinion is Republicans, they what's this article? How did Vox put it? I liked the way Vox put it. They're airing all of their grievances in this. Yes, they were airing all of their grievances yesterday against the Democrats and saying, well, you did this, so now we're doing this. And that actually started with the Democrats. It's not a Republican thing. The Democrats actually started this back and forth between uh, nominees for the Supreme Court with
Yeah, with
and
Robert Bork.
with Robert Bork, and I believe it was Lindsey Graham who brought it up. I didn't know this, but according to Graham, Bork came from the way the Democrats treated what's his name? What was the nominee? What was the nominee that the Bork
Robert,
guy?
yeah, Robert Bork.
Robert Bork. Okay. You're looking at me like you're so confused. I'm like, what? We were just
I just said his name. I don't
Oh,
know.
I didn't hear it. I'm sorry. Robert Bork. So the term you borked something actually comes from that. I didn't know that. So thank you, Lindsey Graham. The one time I will thank you for teaching me something. So that's really messed up. And so this tit for tat back and forth has been going on since then, which I think is childish and needs to stop for both sides. Like, just shut up. We want to learn about this person. I don't care that you're treating them like crap, but they're justifying their treatment of her by comparing this hearing to Kavanaugh's hearing and saying, we're not going to do this. We're not going to beat in the glass on your cars. We're not going to egg your house. We're not going to whatever it was that happened to them during the Kavanaugh case. But again, I'm going to state this again. He raped somebody, which makes this completely different because you didn't listen to her when she came forward about it. Back in the day, he got away with it, and he clearly still got away with it. That Kavanaugh is the epitome of what white privilege looks like. Because the only way she could get people to listen to her story was, and here's my question. If they are vetted by the FBI, why was this not found out in his history? Either the FBI didn't do their job or they just ignored it.
I will tell you, 4,500 tips came in to the FBI about Kavanaugh. They didn't investigate him. They passed him on to the White House to investigate, and therefore he was not investigated.
So they ignored it.
Yeah.
They ignored it. I will
Yeah,
guarantee you they thoroughly investigated Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Because the FBI should have investigated, but the DOJ was William Barr, who, as we like to know, would fillet Donald Trump, basically.
He liked to stroke his ego.
Yeah, and then it did not get investigated, and we all know Donald Trump wasn't going to investigate. So when he passed it on to the White House, he passed the buck.
Okay, so
did not do his job.
Yeah. So that's why Kavanaugh got on, because they literally ignored his problems. They ignored him. They ignored all of the things around him, which is why they got a letter on the first day at the end of the hearings, because they didn't do the investigation. And I'm sorry, but if you rape someone, you shouldn't be in that position, because you clearly don't have the mindset of how someone feels. Because if you rape someone, that means you don't care about them. You care about yourself. And when you rape someone, that means you are a selfish person. And I'm going to continue saying rape, because that's what he did. Not just to her, but to other women.
But that particular party doesn't even care if who they nominate for president rapes somebody.
Exactly. He raped somebody. Please sue me for defamation, because I want to know all of your details.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone likes to sweep under the blanket that Donald Trump was sued for underage rape.
Yes, because he also raped people.
And she was forced to withdraw the lawsuit because of death threats.
Yes.
And when a billionaire wants you dead, you're going to be dead.
Yeah. So, moving on, just a reminder, Ketanji Brown Jackson did not rape someone, which immediately makes this a completely different hearing. So you can't compare this hearing to Kavanaugh's hearing. But
Right?
that is what the
if I was
GOP is upset about right now.
if I was on the committee, I'd ask her that point blank.
Did you
Have
rape
you ever
someone?
raped? Yes. And then when she says no, I'd say, well, that differentiates you from Kavanaugh.
So
the Democrats just lack some balls in their questioning.
They really do. They really do. I really wish that they would kind of be a little bit more like the Republicans when it comes to that. I hate to say that.
They don't know how to use power.
So they brought out a lot of her record when it comes to Guantanamo Bay, child pornography, sentencing, and God, there was another one that just slipped out of my head. What else was it? It was Guantanamo Bay.
Let me look at the note.
Calling George Bush a war criminal. And then critical race theory is what a lot of them really focused on.
CRT.
Yeah, a lot of people a lot of the Republicans focused on CRT.
Namely Ted Cruz.
Yes, namely Ted Cruz, because, well, he's a racist piece of shit who doesn't give a crap about his constituents. Cancun Cruz really has a problem with CRT.
Yeah.
So, one of the allegations. So we're going to just kind of go down the list in this so PBS and Politico are just they're fantastic, but so PBS and Politico are doing a great job at fact checking. Guantanamo Bay, which was Lindsey Graham's like biggest thing and what made him leave and get upset. He talks about 31% of detainees that are released from Guantanamo Bay as that they go back into what is it called, recidivism, which is
the return rate,
which is the actual definition is the tendency is of a convicted criminal to reoffend. So the reoffend rates he claims is 31%, which is not true. It's actually 17% out of Guantanamo Bay. But one thing I want to note is Guantanamo Bay, and we've actually mentioned this before, they also have the right to a lawyer and a speedy trial. So
they do.
We shouldn't be keeping these people in jail after we've had their trial. If their trial, they get off. You know what I mean? Like we need to, like, if they reoffend, they reoffend. That's just part of the process.
We don't need to spend $500 million a year for them.
Yes, we shouldn't be spending $500 million a year, and we certainly shouldn't be in the business of killing them, Lindsey Graham, because that's literally what he said.
Well,
that's what he said. You heard him.
He said he wouldn't mind if they all died in prison.
Okay, you're right. Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, if he wants them dead, the Congress needs to put death penalty on the table for terrorism charges, and they need to bring these people to trial. It is against our Constitution to have people languish in prison for 20 years with no access to attorneys, no access to the courts, That is not the quote American way of justice. But he's willing
To let them die
to
in jail.
ignore the Constitution, let them die in jail, because that's the way he feels. And therefore, he is able, or he will turn aside the US Constitution whenever he feels like it.
And these hearings, the thing that they kept saying is, are you going to interpret the Constitution like the Constitution is? They're very obsessed with her philosophy of the Constitution, which in my opinion shouldn't matter because they're a judge. They're all going to have their own philosophy. Like that, that's their job, is to interpret the Constitution.
Do you want to know how I would shut down that originality policy or view of the Constitution?
Mm-hmm.
I would simply ask her if she thinks she only got 3/5 of a vote on the court. Because constitutionally, that's what she would have.
And so one of the things that they kept saying is, we want the Supreme Court to reflect what our country is, but we also want the Supreme Court to stick to the Constitution. And I hate to say this to Republicans. No, I don't. I don't hate to say this. Those two concepts are in opposition of each other. If you want to try and actually go back to the original Constitution and determine it like at face value and interpret it at face value the way Christians interpret the Bible at face value, it's in direct opposition to actually having a Supreme Court reflect this country, because this country is not white male landowners. This country is more than that, and that's all that Constitution in the beginning was for.
Quite correct.
So those two concepts are in direct opposition of each other.
If you took the original Constitution and you take a look at the Supreme Court, you would have 9 members, but only 5 3/5 votes.
Yes. Well, the women wouldn't have a vote at all.
That's what I'm talking about. There, you got 3 women.
Oh, I see what you say. And then you have Clarence Thomas, who is a black man, who would be 3/5 of a vote.
Right. You have 5 white guys, 1 African American, and 3 women. Mm-hmm. The women and the African American would not have full votes, or 3 of them would not have any.
Right. So it's in direct opposition. So that right there, which the GOP is notorious for being hypocritical, that is in direct opposition of each other. So you can't really do that. Like, to me, I definitely feel it's a living interpretation based off of this current way society feels, because you have to go based off of the greater good, the good of everyone, right?
Not
the community.
Not just how society feels. Technology advances.
Right.
For example, why do you need a search warrant for a wiretap for a telephone line? Telephones weren't around in the 1700s. I'm sorry to say that. Right. But if you're an originalist, then you don't need a warrant for wiretapping, because Constitution doesn't
actually talk about it.
Yeah.
I liked what the representative from Louisiana said about the Constitution, how if it didn't change, how it has to change to reflect. He was actually not a bad. I don't remember his name. He's actually not bad. He was actually not as harsh on her as the other Republicans, and he didn't blame her for a lot of things that the other Republicans are blaming her. They're trying to put a lot of the decisions that the White House made on her, which she doesn't have anything to do with the White House.
Not to mention the Sentencing Commission is more than one person.
Right. So, but back to the Guantanamo Bay, the actual recidivism rate is 17%. Not 31%. The 31% that Graham is getting is where he's getting that from is suspected detainees, not actual confirmed detainees.
Right.
You can suspect that someone's going to reoffend, but until they reoffend, you cannot count that because you don't know if they're
Here-
going to reoffend. That mindset, no joke, that mindset is the same mindset that we go by based off of our prison system. Well, this person definitely is going to reoffend. How do you know? Well, and you with that mindset. So if you look at it and go, okay, these people are suspected of reoffending. If you look at that from that mindset, it's almost like you are forcing that to happen instead of just saying, okay, all right, here are the confirmed reoffenders. This is the rate, right? You can't count suspected people because you don't know if they're going to reoffend.
Here's the other thing when they say recidivism. Did they commit the same crime? Most of those rates are, you know, not the same. You may have been thrown in prison for a felony. You commit a misdemeanor, maybe a DUI. You get thrown in jail. That's considered
A reoffend.
return. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like the recidivism rate to reflect violent crimes again.
Yeah.
Burglaries, thefts, assaults, murders,
DUIs,
rapes.
like clearly you need help if you keep getting DUIs, right?
But
Like,
but if you're put in prison initially for like an armed robbery or bank robbery, but you return to prison because you got a DUI 20 years later,
that's not
you
really a reoffense.
right, but it's considered it.
Yeah. That's not really yeah, exactly. That's the way they calculate that stuff is kind of weird. Um
Some people have a petty theft problem.
mhm.
Uh, in a lot of states, your second or third petty theft can be charged as a felony.
And then
So,
you fill up the prisons with these minor misdemeanor things that are not really okay, whatever,
right, right. And then, he goes out, this person may go out and steal a piece of pizza,
right? Cuz they're hungry.
right? Because they can't get any job
Because
because
they
they
have
have
a
a felony on.
felony.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All of a sudden,
It
that's
it's almost
recidivism.
like it's a system set up to perpetuate the same thing. It's
Well,
almost
I
like
have
it's
my reasons, but it's
systemic.
beyond this.
It's almost like it's systemic. Anyway, so and the reason why she represented for detainees at Guantanamo Bay, and that's why they're bringing up Guantanamo Bay. But the thing is, like, she's not the one who released them. The president's
She
son.
was appointed.
She was appointed
And
to represent them because she was a public
yeah,
defender, and the presidents are the ones who actually release them.
yeah.
Most detainees who were determined to have re-engaged as bad actors were actually released under George Bush, whose
Yes.
administration released 532 detainees. Under Obama, they released 187 detainees. So,
Well, statistics can say one thing. I will say this. Obama had less of a group of people to release
yes.
because Bush already had released 500 or so.
And after Obama, yeah, and Obama introduced measures to screen detainees and determine if they could be safely released. They also required security conditions on detainees in countries where they were sent. And as a result, the re-engagement numbers plummeted because they kept eyes on these people instead of just letting them go. That's kind of how you keep them from reoffending when it comes to terrorism.
Right.
So, and now there are 38 men in Guantanamo Bay following the release of 2 each under Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So there's only 38 people in Guantanamo Bay. right now. So
Right.
this is such a weird thing for someone to focus on, in my opinion, because it feels like it's a non-issue. Other than,
Well, they know it inflames their base.
I need to take a short break,
Okay.
unfortunately. So we're gonna take a short break. I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
I could tell within a moment you knew me well. I could see you gave me solace when I needed someone there.
Okay.
Focus now, I'm seeing clearly for the first time.
All right. Are we back?
Yeah.
Okay, we're officially back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tonks had to go. Both.
Okay.
She did a number 3.
So back to the fact checking. One of the things that Senator John Cornyn, the Texas Senator John Cornyn, called, so he claimed that Ketanji Brown Jackson, we're gonna call her KBJ,
Oh, okay. That
for short. So one of the things that he accuses Judge Jackson of doing is calling George Bush and Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, war criminals in illegal filing. The truth of this, because Senator Durbin was like, so you never called them? And she was like, no. So here's the actual truth. That's a half truth. She never accused them of being war criminals. She accused them of committing war crimes, which is different.
it is.
She didn't lie.
It's a nuanced difference, but it is a difference.
It is a difference. It's a nuanced difference, and it's a very legal nuance, right?
Yeah. Because a war criminal is someone who gets found guilty
of war crimes.
of war crimes.
But they were never found guilty of war crimes. She just said she thinks that they did commit war crimes, which I will say I agree on that. Because what Russia is doing right now to Ukraine is exactly what we did to Afghanistan and Iraq. We occupied them. And everybody's calling that a war crime with Russia, but it's not a war crime when we do it because we're America, right? No, it's still a war crime when we do it. We're just on the winning side, so we don't have to convict ourselves.
Even when we're on the losing side.
We don't convict. Yes. That's where that goes to. So Graham raised the fact that 5 former Afghan prisoners now hold senior positions in the Taliban. Again, back to the whole Gitmo situation. They're now helping the Taliban run the country. Would you say that our system in terms of releasing people needs to be looked at? So here's the fact. Graham's trying to tie Jackson to decisions made by the White House. This is a reference that I said earlier. Like these prisoners were exchanged. The prisoners that he's talking about that are now head of the Taliban were exchanged for the release of a captive army soldier.
Right. Who I believe was then put in Fort Leavenworth for desertion.
So that has nothing to do with her. So I don't know why he even brought that up. That's a weird move. But she has nothing to do with that. She didn't defend them. She has nothing to do with that. She didn't make that decision. Right. That was a decision made by the Obama administration. Cruz Cruz definitely hit her hard on CRT, critical race theory.
Yeah.
His quote is, "You described in a speech to a law school that you were doing a critical race theory." I don't even know what that means. Like, that's so taken out of context. And then Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn, which if you haven't seen the videos, please go look at the videos. They're all over Twitter. They're all over the internet. Her whole thing, she was like, everybody who gets elected has a hidden agenda. What is your hidden agenda? Is your hidden agenda critical race theory? And all I can sit here and go is, no. Everything that she accused Judge Jackson of in her opening statements were not hidden agendas. They're clear and evident by how she judges. Like, what her agenda is evident. And the fact that Blackburn's trying to say that it's some secret hidden agenda is kind of insane to me and doesn't make any sense. But
I want to know what her hidden agenda is.
right, what's your hidden agenda, lady? But the thing is, Jackson's never called for CRT to be a part of sentencing. She has helped with a school in Texas that is what I forget which article it was. I have so many articles that I read, but she supports a school that I believe is in Texas that was segregated before desegregation, and so it has a history of teaching anti-racism and a history of this kind of progressive thinking, right?
Is it historically African American school?
I don't know. I just know that historically, like, this school is specifically geared. They started this back when desegregation was, when the schools were still segregated. This school specifically, I'm sorry, I used the terms backwards. This school was desegregated. So this school was made to put the races together.
Gotcha.
And teach, about that. So that's why she supports it, but it has nothing to do with her like judgment, right? But what she has said is that it's kind of hard, not like, critical race theory is important and people do need to learn it. But none of it relates to what she does as a judge. This is like her extracurricular activities outside of cases that she sees, because each case is different and you can't really use critical race theory when you're actually looking at a case, right? You're looking at a case, and critical race theory is meant to be broad and look at systems as a whole, not individual things.
It's also something that is taught in law school.
Right.
It is a legal theory.
It's CRT is something that I feel needs to be taught because it's about critical thinking, but at different, like, I wouldn't want a 4-year-old to learn a law school theory, right? But a 4-year-old can understand that being white and black doesn't mean that you are different people. You know what I mean? Like, just because,
right.
like, there are levels of CRT that you can teach children so that they're not being hateful towards people. And that is what people are pushing for when it comes to that. Not specifically Judge Jackson, but in general, why, when we bring up CRT, why we want to teach it. We're not trying to teach a law theory to children. We're trying to teach children how to not hate.
It's my theory that pre-K kids already know critical race theory. Because if you get a bunch of toddlers together and throw a bunch of toys, doesn't matter what color they are, they all play with each other.
Right.
Because racism then becomes learned.
Racism is absolutely taught. And if our public education system isn't actively teaching against that, then that means that our education system is racist. Because it is, in this case, it is one or the other, because silence is complacency. And therefore, it continues to teach a system that is mean and hateful towards specific groups of people. That's why
I also believe most racism is taught at home.
Oh, yes. But we shouldn't be in the business of teaching racism at school, which is what we're teaching. We're not teaching our history. We're teaching a whitewashed version of our history. But anyway, we're getting off topic. Tell your opinion, and then we're going to move on.
I'm going to say they reinforce the home teaching of racism. They don't blatantly is not systemic. They don't blatantly teach racism in public schools.
You're right. Okay, I'll agree with you on that. Yes, they perpetuate what they're taught at home instead of trying to actively go against it, right? They don't help it by what they're taught at home because so Another thing that Blackburn brought up was Judge Jackson had, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, advocated for criminal defendants to be released. And the actual facts of that, and there's a lot that goes into that, she was specifically talking about for their safety, that we need to maybe readjust and maybe look at some of these cases and see if there might be some people that could go home instead
She
of,
wasn't the only one.
right, instead of being in a very volatile, high, environment for them to get COVID. That's all it was. That's what she was advocating for. So, and she wasn't the only one advocating for that. There's a lot of people that were advocating for that on both sides.
Yeah.
So
The LA sheriff here in California advocated that.
yeah. So, that's to me neither here nor there, because I don't think that, again, it's, to me, that's GOP reaching for something, anything that they can. They're trying to motivate, because one article I read, they're pretty confident she's going to be confirmed, which I don't. Until it actually comes through, I'm not going to say either way, because I don't know. But she is a very good nomination. She has a really solid track record, consistent track record. She's just a really intelligent person and just compassionate.
ABA says that she is most qualified, which is their highest rating for judge nominee.
Yes. One of the biggest names against her is Hawley, which we all know is, he was part of the January 6th insurrection and probably should be in jail. God, I am just as bad as the Republicans when it comes to this. I have got to stop. I am just as inflammatory as they are. I apologize for that. So Hawley has Josh Hawley has a question her on her child pornography sentencing, because she didn't necessarily specifically, he was talking about defendants who get a shorter term based off of child pornography, that and she came back and was like, well, in these particular cases, they never actually were with a minor. And one particular case, he was 18 years old, and it was people of his age. So she's like, individually, you kind of have to, her rebuttal was, you have to look at these cases individually and look at the facts surrounding them, and see what it is. It was basically from reading it, it sounds like it's an 18-year-old boy who shared pics, probably of his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, and got in trouble for it. Because an 18-year-old will sometimes date a 15, 16-year-old. There's not that big of a difference when it comes to age and mentality. So, yeah, you do need to look at these cases with nuance and see, okay, this isn't really under the legal definition of child pornography. It is child pornography, but let's really look at the reasoning behind this. And that's what she's saying, and why she defends her sentences. She's like, this was an 18-year-old who basically did something stupid, and she lays out, exactly what it was.
But here's the thing. Those sentences were not outside of the federal guidelines.
They're not. But I'm just saying what she's defending. Like, I'm just telling you her defense.
She put it back on him and said Congress passed these laws of minimum sentences back in 2005, and you took any discretion really away from the judges.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps Congress needs to go back and reevaluate these sentences. And then Dick Durbin kind of said after because the heads of the committee get to chime in every so often.
Right.
He said you're right. We got to take some responsibility for these kinds of sentences, and that
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really good. I'd like to wrap this up because I mean we're definitely over time here. We're I would like to wrap this up and say I see I think tomorrow is going to be a lot of the same as today.
Oh yeah,
They're just trying to find anything they can and trying to kind of it seems like the Republicans, they may not necessarily be blaming her, but what they're trying to do is people who don't understand the law, which is your average person, um, which is why we do this podcast. Your average everyday person's gonna go, why did she do that stuff? Why, what is her opinion on this, right? That's what so the Republicans are trying to get her to trying to get their fan base and people, like trying to get constituents to kind of
inflamed.
I don't want to say inflamed,
I
but
will.
it feels like so they want it to be a wash. They don't want it to be a full win for Democrats because that's that's all they care about right now is who wins. Same thing with Democrats, which is why Democrats do the same thing. And so like I hate it because it's so partisan in the way they're talking back and forth instead of just focusing on the facts of her history and what she's done. Like I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. And that's my opinion on that.
Right, and it didn't used to be prior to Bork. Ronald Reagan's, the iconic conservative. Ronald Reagan's 3 appointments were all 97-0, 98-1.
Yeah, this really shouldn't be such a it's become a sensationalist thing more than just the facts. And I really wish that our government, our Congress would stop inflaming like it just anyway.
That's how they get reelected.
Oh, I know. And that's essential, and we are going into midterms, which is a lot of the reason why the Republicans are trying to associate her with things that she's not actually associated with in hopes that they'll get reelected, because if you associate her with Guantanamo Bay and the Taliban, well, they didn't like this nominee, so I'm going to vote for this Republican again because maybe next time, they can stop someone like her from being nominated, if that
not
makes
just
sense.
re-election. There's a number of Republicans on the committee that want to run for president in 2024.
Yes. So, we're gonna leave this with Ron's final thoughts, and then we'll close this out. What are your thoughts on anything as far as this goes?
Do it. It's what at least it's what I expected. They're just the Republicans are going to go after her. The Democrats are going to lob her softballs. And in the end, is she going to get nominated? I believe so. Will she get some Republican votes? I also think so.
I think she can. I think because there's been a number of Republicans coming out and supporting
I'm going to
her.
say Mitt Romney did call out that the attacks on the child pornography were off base.
It's because they don't have anything really,
right? Because
like
she's
rape.
She's very, very qualified.
She is highly qualified.
Harvard Law,
okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. This is ADHD brain. Continue your thoughts.
Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law, a federal defender. There hasn't been a defender on the Supreme Court in decades.
A public defender? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It would really behoove us to have a public defender on the Supreme Court.
And to go against someone who's a federal public defender who doesn't get to choose who they represent, but you get appointed to who you represent because that's the American way.
Right.
If you go after her for that, you are un-American. You don't believe in the Constitution, and you can move to Moscow. My opinion. I'm done.
I did want to make a note because there was something that was said last night by there's a couple of things. So my notes. The Republicans are very critical on the Democrats' opposition to their previous choices of color. But my question is, why haven't you nominated more? Because they keep saying, because they did keep bringing up, like, this is historic, but, like, we've also put up nominees. And I'm like, okay, but how many have you put up that were people of color in the past? And I want to ask the Democrats the same question. Why is this the first woman of color the first black woman you've ever put up? I fixed it because they did put up a woman of color. Why haven't we had more?
What you really got to look at is the district court and the court of appeals, and what is the diversity of each party nominated to those levels.
Yes.
That's where you can really see what the party as a general rule thinks.
Yes. So I don't think they really have a leg to stand on when they complain about that, because they've only put up one black woman ever and then one Hispanic dude. That's it. One of each, and you keep referring to them as if they were, I mean, one of them was but they were both during the Bush administration, which was 20 years ago. So why didn't you put up, you had three nominees under Trump. Why were none of them people of color?
Well,
why are you referring to people of color from an administration that was 4 administrations ago?
I will say,
because you don't have a leg to stand on.
He could have put Herman Cain up for nomination, but Trump ended up killing him because of COVID.
I think Herman Cain was a sad situation. I don't think he was a bad guy. I think he just got caught up in some stuff that was just far beyond his comprehension, you know?
But they could have nominated him.
And he perpetuated, something that he didn't fully I don't think he fully grasped that he was perpetuating white supremacy. I really don't. I think he genuinely thought that he pulled himself up by his bootstraps and blah, 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 blah. I don't think he knew he was a token.
Well, you got 3 kinds of conservatives.
Because here, let me finish my thought. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at a lot of the things that he would say, they definitely were in opposition to a lot of his party stuff. I don't think he, like, his personal beliefs, I don't think he realized what was going on until it was too late. And then he was just, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he was more a physical conservative than a social conservative.
Yeah, because he was socially, like, way more liberal, and he just kind of, I think he just got caught up in perpetuating, the GOP push.
Right, because that's the only way they would let him talk.
Yeah, and survive and keep his jobs and stuff. And that to me is sad. I don't think he was stupid. That's not what I'm saying. I think that he was trying to survive, and it screwed him over.
Yeah.
So, rest in peace, Herman Cain. But I had one other thought, and I can't even remember what it was. It was something about what Blackburn said. Um, God, she said so much ridiculous stuff, but yeah,
I,
that's it.
I didn't even know who she was prior to this.
I didn't either.
And
But she's a racist lady from
n-
Tennessee. That's all I
now,
know.
now I think her hidden agenda includes a hood robe and a burning cross.
Anyway, so in conclusion, Ketanji Brown Jackson has not raped anyone, which is why she is a wonderful um, addition to the Supreme Court. Oh, that just reminded me what I wanted to say. Ah, crap. Now I forgot again.
Was it something about rape?
No. Anyway. Oh, yes, that's what Blackburn said. So Blackburn talked about how Ketanji Brown Jackson her story is a wonderful story of the American dream and how she was able to utilize blah 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 blah. And the whole time she was speaking, all I could think was, no, Ketanji Brown Jackson's story is a story of persevering in spite of the American dream.
When Blackburn said that, it didn't sound very sincere to me. It sounded like she was saying that because she felt she needed to say it
Mm-hmm.
in order to placate people, but she didn't believe it one bit.
No, I don't agree with her statements either. Because you can't pull yourself. One, it's physically impossible to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. That's just not a thing. Y'all should stop. People need to stop saying that. Two, she was born a black person. She was born into a black family, an educated black family, but a black family nonetheless. So from the day of her birth, the country, the world was against her. And she has gotten to this point, which is one of the highest points you could be for a lawyer, which is amazing for a lawyer and a judge. This is an amazing opportunity. And she did all that in spite of all of the things against her. That is amazing.
Yep.
And I would love to see more opportunities for people like her, because we're in 2022, and this is the first time we've ever had a black woman nominated for the Supreme Court. First time we've had a black woman vice president. We are far behind. And the civil rights movement was only 50 years ago. 60 years ago at this point, yeah. My parents were alive during the civil rights movement. We have not progressed very far since then.
We've regressed.
So, to notorious KBJ, Judge Jackson, we support you, and congratulations on this enormous event in your life, and good luck. I really hope you win.
Ditto.